Hello, my name is Cassandra Woodard, and I am the POEM Volunteer Program Manager. POEM stands for Perinatal Outreach and Encouragement for Moms, and POEM Rise is the branch of POEM that is specifically by and for African American Black moms and birthing persons. Today, we are talking about Let's Talk About It, Triggers and Treasures of Parenting in the Black Neurodivergent Space. And I have three panelists who are amazing. And I'm going to hand the mic to April to introduce herself, and we'll just keep going.
Thank you, Cass. Good morning, everyone. I'm April Stevens. I'm the mom of a son with autism who is now 19 years old. I'm an avid autism advocate. And lastly, I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Autism from Another Spectrum. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everybody. I'm Arla Lyles. I also have a son who has ADHD. He is the younger twin of my two boys. I have three biological children, four stepchildren, three grandchildren, and many of my children and grandchildren have ADHD as well. I know their father has it. I do show up in this space as the co-facilitator of our in-person RISE support group, but I also facilitate, coordinate, and offer one-on-one coaching for women who live and work in Franklin County and who are interested in learning more about positive parenting strategies.
Good morning, all. My name is Dr. Darion Greer. I am a licensed clinical psychologist here in the state of Ohio, working specifically at The Ohio State University in the main counseling center, termed Counseling and Consultation Service. And I am also embedded within the Center for Belonging and Social Change. And so doing this work with college students, children, and families has always been a passion of mine. And so I'm just very blessed to be here with everyone and to learn and to grow and to definitely field any questions and things of that nature. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, panelists. And I noticed I completely forgot to say that I'm a person on the autism spectrum, and I parent a 6-year-old on the autism spectrum. So I am joining us as a peer in the space, a person in the space, and a mama who just wants to help other parents and birthers. So let's go ahead and get right into the discussion. First thing I would love for us to kind of do to get to know our panelists a little bit more. April and Arla, you can choose whoever wants to go first. But can you describe how neurodivergence entered your world and what you have struggled with the triggers in the parenting space? You know, there's home life, there's our school life, IEPs, all that whatnot. There's our social life, and then there's our health life. Whoever wants to go first, go ahead.
I can go first. Neurodivergence first appeared in my world when my son was diagnosed with autism at 3 years old. I started seeing signs of autism at 18 months. And unfortunately, the doctors were giving me the runaround and they were referring me to the neurologist and to a speech therapist. And they were saying that, well, he's a boy, you know, boys are delayed, but they're a little slower than girls. So he was finally diagnosed at 3 years old. And at that time, we then had to put him into preschool because we missed out on early intervention, which is critical to have a better life outcome because the brain is forming, it's changing from birth to 5 years. So the sooner that they can get help, the better life outcome they will have. As far as the things, the struggle with triggers in home life is just explaining to the family that, you know what, he has autism. And there's just certain environments that make him uncomfortable. So, for example, Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas dinners, those family gatherings, those social situations, it can be overwhelming for him, right? And when he was smaller, he would cover his ears and he would bend down because the noise was just too much for his brain to handle. It would overwhelm his central nervous system. So those are some of the triggers in the home life. And I just had to train my family. This is what he is. and there's nothing wrong with him. His brain processes information differently. And these are the characteristics of him, right? He's hypersensitive. So if we're having a Christmas dinner, it's okay for him to leave that environment, whatever it takes to make him comfortable, because this is his home. And home has to be a safe space. As far as school life, I could write a book on it. Having a Black son who is neurodivergent is not for the weak, or a Black girl who's neurodivergent is not for the weak, right? Because we have to deal with bias and prejudice and racism already. And then you add neurodivergent to that, and that's a whole nother world, right? And I just did not let it consume me. I became the fire. I refused to let them pigeonhole my son into what they wanted him to be. I challenged the teachers to be better teachers for him, because not only would that help my son, but it would help every other child who was neurodivergent in that space. I'm sure the teachers could not stand me and were so happy when my son finally graduated. But at the end, they thanked me for being an advocate because I taught them how to be better teachers. And that's what was most important. Social life, he is at the point where he understands what his sensitivities are. So if we go to a concert and he loves music, but he likes certain music, right? And he likes certain tones. So you can't have like a loud horn with a high note because that annoys him. But if it's a low tone, he's great. So anyway, we've discovered noise canceling headphones because I know that certain sounds are triggers for him. And I want him to be comfortable in this world. And I want him to be confident in whatever space that he is in. Health life has been very interesting because the doctors are so behind when it comes to the underlying medical issues that our neurodivergent children have. And so I've had to go to California to get information. Atlanta, I remember when he was first diagnosed, we drove all the way to Detroit, Michigan at 3 o'clock in the morning just to attend what's called a biomedical conference. So I wanted to get to the underlying medical issues that he had that his pediatrician wasn't able to tell me. I hope that wasn't too much information.
Oh, no way. I'm shaking my head the whole time. Like, I remember that. I remember that with Jaden. I remember that with honestly, even with myself. You know, you and I, we're in the music world. So a lot of times when I would have on, earplugs or headphones, I was giving myself the accommodation I needed without knowing of my neurodivergence, and just understanding how much we do that and how much it's needed, and why these conversations must continue to happen, especially with the community who works with those families. So you're trauma informed about it. So no, that's so good. And Arla, I'll hand the mic right back to you. Thank you so much, April.
Sure, you're welcome.
Thanks, Cass. How neurodivergence entered my world was my son was in middle school, 6th grade. He had several teachers, if you can remember middle school. You're transitioning from maybe having one or two teachers to a multitude of teachers for different subjects. And so his math teacher happened to be another woman of color. And I just remember her saying, he needs to be on medication. And I feel like at the time I received the message, I think I understood what she meant, but the delivery for me was bad. And, when you're a mama of little brown boys, a part of your job is to protect them. And I was really triggered by, her delivery. And in essence, I shut it down. And I resented her for not having the wherewithal to be a little more sensitive, in delivering such a heavy message. But I think in the back of my mind, I recognized something was going on. I just wasn't ready to receive it from her at the time. So in essence, I dismissed it. Now he had a reading teacher who was not a woman of color, who said to me, like at a parent-teacher conference, she said, he needs to be physically active. she says him being physically active helps him process information. And that felt, like good news. That felt a little more kind. I was able to receive that message better. I couldn't disagree with her. What I recognized in my son is that he's a very physically active child, a fidgeter, right? He's very, ants in the pants kind of kid, doesn't sit still well, has to be moving and doing something with his hands and his body. And so, what I struggled with, again, just the delivery of the message. I also struggled with, as it relates to home life, people thinking something was wrong with my son. And again, not disagreeing with them, but that, protector in me, attempted to not dismiss, but, try to regulate the dialogue around my son and let my brothers know, like, he's just like his father, he's just that kid. But I remember my brother saying, like, he just doesn't care about certain things. And even a friend of mine was like, something's wrong with him. You need to get him checked out. And so, in school, I think he did pretty well. At least up until this point, I think he did pretty well. He was that kid, though, that was up at the pencil sharpener, that was in and out of his seat, moving around the room. He really had a hard time controlling his body. And so I think he had some teachers that knew how to manage that, and some teachers who would rather he be on medication, so they didn't have to manage that. In terms of social life, I think he did pretty well, managing up until this point. Something that we ran into is, as a twin, people expect twins to be similar, and they were and are. But his brother, both of them were athletes. And so, but his brother did really well academically. And my son Ashanti did not do so well academically. And I really believe that, his condition impacted his ability to perform in that school setting. Also, maybe not having teachers who knew how to encourage and support that diagnosis. And in reality, he wasn't diagnosed until he was 17. Which makes me feel a little bit bad because, that's, sixth grade till, being a high school student is a lot of time that passed when he did not get, the medical attention, the guidance, the knowledge and information he needed to really get the condition under control himself, and the information I needed to be the parent he needed me to be and help him cope with this condition and really perform well at home, in school, socially, and otherwise. Because he didn't perform well in school, he couldn't play basketball. And I realized the long-term effects of him not being able to play basketball. His brother is in college on a basketball scholarship, and he didn't get an opportunity to have that life. And really, he's still learning to manage ADHD. I'm still learning how to parent him with this condition. It's an ongoing daily thing that we have to learn to manage. In terms of his health life, so we experienced a period of homelessness. We ended up living with a friend of mine who was like, something's wrong with him, you need to get him checked. And I think at that point I was like, it's probably time. So this was during COVID. They had the telehealth option. So we were able to get him diagnosed. We were both relieved that there was a diagnosis. I think we both, up until this point, were like, what's happening? But he has a lot of pride. And he didn't want ongoing counseling. We were able to do some counseling, which he didn't particularly like. We were able to do some in-person counseling, and he'd kind of sit with his arms folded. we did this through Nationwide Children's Hospital. I appreciate being able to go through this process because the counselor wanted me there as well so she could educate both myself and my son on what was happening. And, what stood out for me was, she mentioned that, the body releases this hormone that helps you self-regulate. And in your son, there's like a little vacuum that comes and sucks it all up before he can use it. So that really helped me understand that he struggles with self-regulation, and I knew this. I also saw with him what presents as anxiety, and I also see symptoms of depression. When I ask him about it, he denies being depressed, but it's obvious to me. I know what it looks like having bouts of depression myself. Doesn't want to be on medication. And so, I really try to support him in the best way that I know how. It always feels insufficient, if I'm being honest. I wish I had a recipe. I wish I had, a workbook. I wish I had some instructions on how to be the parent that this child needs, because at 20 years old, in some ways, he's really more like 17. He isolates himself. He's happy just to be in his room on the game. He was doing some online education at Columbus State, but he's very much an introvert like his mom. And so, just to be very transparent, we're still learning to navigate all the different aspects of ADHD, how it affects him and our family life.
Arla, thank you so much for that transparent moment. You used the term lifelong. And, I think the other day I was walking and said, Cass, there's not a moment your son is not going to be autistic. This is a lifelong rhythm that you now have to learn the new dance steps to. And that song might change every day, every week, every hour, every minute, but get yourself in the pace of forward. So describe the support resources, April and Arla, that you leaned on the most to survive and thrive in your mental health during this, that realizing and opening up. Because once we talk to Dr. Greer, I know he's going to just piggyback on top of that and give us some great tools. April, go right ahead.
Sure. The support resources that really helped me to survive and thrive is an organization called Milestones. They're out of Cleveland, Ohio, and I discovered them when Xavier was diagnosed with autism, and that was back in 2008. And they have just been phenomenal. They really have opened the door to even talk about autism and how it affects our Black families. They've had me as an autism speaker at their national conferences. They have just gone above and beyond to support Black families and also multicultural families, but we're just going to focus on Black families because this is for us right now. So they definitely were a great resource for me to get any support, whether it was trying to find a doctor to help him with his health needs, advocating for him in the educational setting. Milestones was there. So they definitely helped me to survive, and I'm still surviving and I'm still thriving. And also, my mom and my dad, they are angels from heaven, and I'm going to try not to cry just talking about them. But I remember when I got that diagnosis, it was a hard pill to swallow. I'm very transparent with this. And I was mad at God because in my mind, I was thinking, well, God, I waited to have a baby until I got married. All these things that don't make a difference, right? That's like the guilt that moms carry. Like, we did something to cause this, if we can just be honest. So my mom and my dad, they were so helpful. I mean, and they still help me to this day. And Xavier is 19 years old and they're still there. So my family, milestones, my faith is number one, because when I got that diagnosis for 2 weeks, I was mad at God. I didn't want to read a Bible, didn't want to hear gospel music. I was just like, how do I get through this? And it was like, God just told me that, he would perform a miracle if I just believed, and I believed it. And It took 7 years to hear Xavier say one word. So he has regressive autism, right? So it was like he was talking, he was developing normally, and then something came and took my little boy away. And through prayer and fasting, and also getting him all the therapy that he needed, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, swimming, art, music, computer, and also biomedical interventions, everything helped him become who he is today, as well as me. That's why I am here, because no matter what situation you are finding yourself in today, it does get better. And as moms, we have to remember that our kids are going to get older, they're going to evolve, and you're going to have to evolve with them. And it's a hard evolution. When my son turned 18, I was like, oh my God, now he's an adult and he's a Black boy with autism and he's 18. But through those support resources that I just named, we are going through it together. I am growing with him. He is a young man, so he's not like the 3-year-old kid that had autism. He's 19 now, and he's in college, and he's noticing things. So that was my greatest support were my parents. First of all, God, because He gave me those wonderful parents who would not let me sit in I call it an abyss of depression and sadness, because when you get that diagnosis, it's like you picture this perfect life for your precious little baby, right? And you get that diagnosis and it's like your dream is shattered, right? But you have to realize that it's not about you, it's about the child. And as a mom, we are gifted these children and they all have assignments, and every child has a talent or a gift that needs to be nurtured, no matter what their ability is. So that was definitely my support resource, my God, my parents, and milestones.
So what I'll share is, I mentioned Nationwide Children's Hospital, their behavioral health division was an amazing resource. I mentioned they gave us the education we needed to understand. At that point, I was the type of mom that expected myself, as a single mom, I expected myself to know who my children are, show up for them the way they need, parent them the way they need. I thought I could do it all on my own. I expected myself to do it all on my own. My parents are on the other side, and so they were a huge support when they were here. But I'm literally on my own trying to be all the things that my kids need. And in one of those therapy sessions, I realized that without knowing what ADHD is and knowing that your child has ADHD, there's no way you can do everything that your child needs. So for me, it was a relief to just be like, I'm not perfect. I can't be perfect. This is outside of my awareness and outside of my skill set. And so it felt like help at the time, right? I find, because my son is newly diagnosed, that I lean on you, Cass. While I am here on the panel, I'm also a participant. I feel like there's a lot that I can learn and still need to learn about neurodivergence, especially in my child, and clearly in myself as well. I appreciate your slide educating us on what neurodivergence is, because I saw PTSD on there and I'm like, oh, okay, I am neurodivergent, right? And that helps me give myself grace and helps me self-care and attend to my health as well in a meaningful and intentional way. So being in the in-person support groups at RISE, I get bits and pieces of support and resources from you and the larger RISE community. It feels amazing to be supported in that way. And other colleagues, I've ran into other people who have ADHD or who have children who have ADHD. I would consider myself a people person, even as an introvert. I prefer like one-on-one interactions. And, I find that Spirit brings people into my awareness who have nuggets to share. And so I really lean on my community. And for me, those are the three most meaningful resources and supports that I found on this journey.
I'm so full because my little answer is I leaned on y'all, Home Rise, my community, other providers, especially April. Lots of conversations with April on how to navigate the school life, how to navigate IEPs, ERTs, all the things. Arla, you in that peer space as birthers and Black moms. And I'm so honored to listen and hear for what you all shared. Dr. Greer, if we could get your expertise and thoughts, now that we've heard real parents in real time share their experience, lived experience, which is again something that here at Mental Health America of Ohio, we use to support the peer space. Can you tell us in your professional space, what types of triggers and struggles do parents mostly report for themselves in the therapy space, and what impact have you seen on parents who are parenting children with high needs, and anything else you can tell us? I'll go on mute. Go ahead.
I just want to say you all as a male sitting here amongst this power that I'm from the deep south, so I want to say I want to speak as humbly as I know how, because I am floored and awed and amazed by everything that I've heard from mothers, specifically Black mothers, and what you all do. The older I get, the more I'm learning to submit myself to you all, because we cannot do what you do. You know that. And I think that's the part that's humbling me even more as I, work to assist my partner and my wife with raising our 3 children. And so I just want to say thank you for everything I've heard. And I'm very humbled in this moment. I really am. So I'm just listening to the kindness, and I may bounce a little bit over the questions, Miss Woodard, that's okay. Just to see the kindness that you all are bringing to yourselves, first and foremost, that grace that I hear you giving yourselves, and this is to, of course, everyone on the call, that I know you're experiencing your own experience and your own journey. So that nurture that you already are, but the kindness that I just hear illuminating, I want to start with that and asking you to never let that go, and continue to give yourself grace. Give yourself as many pats on the back as you need, and of course, um, working to even harder to get yourself to that self-care and level of self-care that you feel you need. And I say that because you make the 100 every day, and how you raise the children, no matter the situation in terms of what they're experiencing, in terms of the condition, mental health wise, physical, you do the job. But I guess if I'm speaking more toward the parents and how you're taking care of yourself, prioritizing that girl's night out. Please do that, prioritizing getting the hair done and the nails done, and taking your own staycation and vacation by yourself, or with your lady friends, or whoever it is that you choose. Advocating for yourself. I'm using that term because I've heard one of our great members here today use the term advocate. Continue to advocate for yourself. Some of the struggles that I see um, are just the high needs of getting the children together every day to get them out the house, the parent teacher conferences, albeit whether the mother is with the father or not. But definitely, I'll say I see quite a few single mothers, especially in private practice. Of course, not as much in the counseling center space with college students, but just seeing how the age-old cliche and adage, being mom and dad, and how fluently you do that and continuing to vacillate in and out of that world. So understanding that you are enough, and you're doing the best you can with what you got and what God gifted you with. And so continuing to tell yourself, even after you say and feel that you're doing the best you can, that you are still enough. And when you need the extra support, the mental health therapist, I feel that I see that there are a few of us on the call. Get to us. Um, help friends and loved ones in your space that may need to get to us. I often say everyone doesn't need therapy, but maybe it's a life coach. Uh, maybe it's a patient navigator to help you navigate your health insurance needs and things of that nature. I'll say we often don't know that we have more benefits and perks with our insurances and things that we can use in terms of income-based gym memberships, because we need that holistic approach, the exercise, the burning some endorphins off, because I know that your days are long and hard. And so let's see, without rambling too much here, knowing yourself, that self-awareness helps us watch for those signs of burnout. Um, and just being able to understand that if you need help, it is here. If you don't know where to go, I'm hearing here, even though I'm getting introduced to this great group poem here. If you don't know where to go, reach out to Poem. It appears that they will always answer the call or answer the email and then direct you, refer you out to one of us. And then, if you get to me and you need medication, I'm gonna refer you right to the psychiatrist, whatever the case may be. But just continuing to build that support group and that network so that we can keep the age of each one reach one principle, so we can keep psychoeducating each other on what the resources actually are. So just hearing our panel member here speak about what the resources are, speak to someone, talk to someone, because oftentimes in terms of that degrees of separation in life, that phenomenon, someone knows someone that knows someone. So just like we're talking about our homes, our houses, I got a guide. There's normally someone there that can help get us to that next space. So deepening that level of self-awareness, knowing that you are enough, is definitely an empowerment message that I look to get over to all my clients across, I'll say all three of my caseloads, to be empowered, to get yourself to the help you need. And I know I'm finally a girl dad. We previously had sons. The oldest junior, my namesake, is in college, and so like, okay, none were born with any conditions, but then baby girl was born with the condition. And so just watching my wife navigate that, and just knowing, like, I've got to do my job to step up and support um, through the entire process. So helping each other, helping out, reaching out, speaking up. And I think I'll say here before just stopping and before we proceed in the program is the old adage, not suffering in silence. That is the last thing that my heart burns for, is to. So every time I see a new client, I just tell them thank you for coming, or thank you for returning, because that's just, I think, a pang on my heart, is to see anyone suffering in silence, as a true empath that I am, and trying to be a helper. And so and if we think we know something, let's pick up the phone. If we think we see something in the family member or in the child or anything of that nature, let's not keep quiet, because I'm thankful that we're a changing generation, where we're not just kind of sweeping things under the rug and glossing over things anymore, and wondering why the child is in the back room quiet, not really social like it was in the days of old. So thank you to us as a newer generation for stepping up to the plate, and just know that we're here in whatever capacity, and we're here to answer the bell and answer the call. So again, I can't say how humbled I am to be on this panel to learn and continue to grow as a father, and of course, everyday clinician, and trying to just help folks, if that makes sense. I'll kind of stop there, Miss Withers, if that's okay.
Yeah, that was perfect, what we needed, and I'm taking my mindful moment to say I am enough. I appreciate that reminder. Yeah, and I hope that resonated with everybody else, just to take a mindful moment and remind yourself that you are enough right now. Yeah. Okay. I'm enjoying this conversation and want to continue. Okay, parents, we're shifting it back to you. If you can, let's just describe for me the impact your fervent advocacy for your child and for yourself has had on your mental health, and how have you taken care of yourself in all of that? As we're recording this, I'm hoping someone is watching saying, I know I have to advocate for myself. I know I have to do the things, but how do I still do the things and still take care of me and stay afoot? Because life gonna life, okay? But let's hear from not necessarily experts, but lived experience, how we're hanging in there. So April, if you want to go first, that'd be great.
Sure, Cass. I would say my fervent advocacy for my son has made me become more of an overcomer. And I hope that makes sense. In the beginning stages, when I got that diagnosis, I didn't know what to do. I had no idea. All I had was, my faith, my prayer life, and my fasting. But this was a whole new world for me, right? And so in the beginning, it was very taxing. Um, I was married and then I got a divorce. And so I was handed this diagnosis with no known cause and no treatment and no cure. And so when you get that diagnosis, it can almost feel like overwhelming when you get that, because you're like, okay, what do I do with this? And at the time, there was an autism school, and they were charging $60,000 per year for kids to be enrolled. This was back in 2008. So that meant that only the rich could get help for their kids, right? So that's why he had to go into the preschool environment, because I just didn't have $60,000 sitting in a bank somewhere. And so at that time, it was very stressful. It was very stressful. I look at the pictures during that time and I look older then than I do now. That was the impact of my mental health during that time. But going through this transition, like I said, I've become a bigger overcomer. The bigger the challenges, the bigger the overcomer. And I appreciate Dr. Greer's comment saying that we are enough. I feel that with God, I'm more than enough. Because being enough when you have a neurotypical child is not enough, because you're dealing with so many barriers. You're dealing with racism, bias, prejudice, ableism, ignorance. You're dealing with all these things, and it can almost feel overwhelming. So you have to become more than enough. You have to find your joy. You have to not let a diagnosis or a condition consume you. You have to consume it. And you have to help other parents. I found that by helping other parents, when I started like a support group in Northwest Akron, that's really what helped me with my mental health. Because at the time, I was going through a divorce. I was dealing with autism. I was dealing with racism in the school system and advocating for my son not to be stereotyped and all of that. So that has what advocacy have done for me in my mental health. I've been able to overcome this condition I don't call neurodivergence a disorder. I think we have to be careful of the words that we use. You have to think of that child or adult that has that condition and be sensitive to that. So when I speak of my son, he has a condition and it's a worldwide condition, and that's okay. And then how have I taken care of myself? I had to realize, who were you before the diagnosis, right? Because you are fighting every day, you're advocating, you're learning, you're trying to educate yourself, you're connecting yourself with different organizations to guide you through this journey, because it is a lifelong journey. A lot of kids, a lot of adults or parents think that when a child turns 18, it's all over. No, it's lifelong. I'm here to tell you it is lifelong, and it is a totally different journey when they turn 18, because a lot of neurodivergent children, they are sometimes 3 years behind because of the hormones and the way their brain functions. And you're trying to figure out, well, why do they have an attitude? They didn't have an attitude last week. Well, things have changed. They're growing. We all change. So that's pretty much my story on that. And as far as what helped me come back to who April Nicole Stephen was before autism, is I had to find what gave you joy, what gave you peace, what is your gift, what is your purpose. And for me, mine is music. I've always been involved with music, right, Cass? I know you know. So singing, songwriting, getting back to music production. And now that Xavier is 19 years old, the gift of his God-given talent is coming out, right? So he's an artist. So now I'm having to shift to, oh, okay, now you're an artist. Okay, well, let's go ahead and tackle this. So just allowing myself to be open and not boxing myself in. A lot of times we have chains, I call it chains on our brains. We stop ourselves from doing things that we enjoy because of the condition. We stop our children or adults from being who they are because we don't understand what the gift or talent is. And when you find out what your child or adult talent or gift is, your mental health will increase 100%. It's the not knowing that is so stressful. It's the not knowing that gives you anxiety and keeps you up late at night. So that's how I take care of myself. I find things that I find joy in. I go to concerts, I write songs, I connect with other musicians. We go to art exhibits. We've been to just about every major art museum in America because that's what Xavier's interests are. And I want him to be in that environment that will inspire him. So that's how I take care of myself and my mental health.
Today, I am enough. Thank you, Dr. Greer. But once upon a time, I didn't feel that way. I felt inadequate. I felt like my tools were insufficient. So receiving the diagnosis, as I mentioned, was a relief, right? As April mentioned, we now know what's going on and what's happening. So, as a part of the diagnosis process, the school is informed. So now the teachers know and the support staff know, and they can make accommodations. I found that my son wasn't here for the accommodations. At the end of the day, it's his choice. I've raised my kids to have choice, to make their own decisions. I don't force them to do much. I try to motivate them and incentivize them to do certain things. But I just remember before we got the diagnosis, he came to me, which is not something he would normally do. And, very calmly and stilly, he said, "Mom, do you think I have ADHD?" And I said, "What do you think?" And he was like, "I think I do." And I said, "How does that make you feel?" Right? And he wasn't sure how he felt yet, but I could feel in his energy that he also must have been wondering, what's going on and what's happening. And I could just tell that, he was relieved as well. I could tell he was apprehensive because I think he probably wasn't sure what this would mean. But, I find it interesting because his father on a bad day will still deny that he has it. Some days, he's like, that's not a real thing, right? I don't have that. But then there are days he's like, I might have that. So, I see this man in my son. He is his father's child, right? And so for me, the advocacy looks different on different days. I'm trying to understand, like, this behavior that I see. Is it ADHD? Or is it his father's DNA? Like, what's happening right now? So, it's interesting, from day to day, how it looks and how it presents itself. But, advocacy looks like checking in with him, how you doing? Are you okay? From day to day. At 20 years old, I have taken a small step back because, I'm not going to say I've done all that I can, but I put up a good fight for my son. And, as a parent to step back from your child. But at this point, he has to understand his ADHD and he has to understand how to manage it and he has to learn how to cope. I'm always right there. And he's a brilliant young man. This has nothing to do with his intelligence or his ability, to use what he knows. But it does have an impact on his daily life. He forgets things. And so, he's an Alexa, and I love to hear him say, Alexa, give me a reminder for such and such, right? And I encourage him to set several alarms on his phone and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, parenting boys and girls is different. So I had to tell myself, like, you're going to have to keep reminding this son to do certain things, right? I don't want to have to do that, but I've just accepted. I've accepted this. I've accepted him. I allow him to show up the way that he is, but I'll give him some gentle reminders. I'll coach him gently because I want to be respectful of him. I don't want to be telling him what to do, and I don't want to, get in his face, and I don't want to jump on his back. And so, I do it kindly, I do it gently. But, I've just said that this is it. At 20, he's the child that's home. His brother and sister are out in college. And so I struggle with wanting him out there on his own so mom can be a real empty nester. And then, my brain is like, he's not ready. He's not ready. He says he wants to get an apartment and get a car and work and do those things, but his behavior doesn't say that. His behavior looks like, I'm happy being right here with you, Mom. And so for my mental health, I'm doing my best to practice radical rest, which is resting by any means necessary, when I need to, how I need to, while also being mindful to prioritize and do the things I need and want to do. At my stage of life, rest is my very best friend. So for my mental health, I prioritize rest. I also, move my body, take walks. I get my fruits and vegetables in. I find that physical health, lends itself to my mental health and vice versa. I'm really trying to embrace this stage of life. I'm really trying to allow myself to enjoy the things that, I raised my kids. I want to celebrate that. I want to feel accomplished. I want to move a little bit away from that active parenting while also having this child in my household who needs that. So it's a balancing act of being there for him in a way that feels meaningful for him. And that also allows me to enjoy, having him in my space, quote unquote. So it's a juggling act, an ongoing juggling act. But I also try to do this self-care as a way to model for him as well. eat my salads and my apples. And son, some apples in there. You should get some. There's a salad, get some salad because, he'll avoid vegetables and fruit all day long if you let him. So I do recognize that how he eats and whether he moves his body impacts his mental health. So just trying to model that for him, and give myself as much grace as possible, because I'll get down on myself and my daughter will say, Mom, you're a great mom and you did your very best, and he has to make the choices that are right for him. So just encouraging that as much as I can.
I love that, Arla, so much. You said a lot there, and no, good stuff. I know that came out wrong. But I noticed the time, so I'm going to go ahead and get your thoughts, Dr. Greer, on just how have you helped parents cope with their mental health struggles and navigating parenthood? And then we'll go to our last question so that we can allow our audience to talk to us a little bit. How about that? Sounds like okay. So essentially, Dr. Greer, if you could just share some good points on how we could just, how we can cope with our mental health struggles as parents. You've been in that space, and I'm open to hearing your thoughts about that. So I'll pass the mic and then we'll share our last little thoughts.
Of course, thank you. And just wanting to stand corrected, of course, as Ms. Stevens said, you are more than enough. Yes, yes. And so just helping parents that are looking for those coping strategies. I don't think just because I know we're about to open it up here, so I'll just say real briefly, continuing to I don't think I'll add too much to what I said a little earlier. And just in terms of doing what you feel you need to do to take care of you. What that kind of old saying, what floats your boat, using those things that you already do and then adding and deepening those things to kind of cope through and just kind of latching on to. If you got a good guidance counselor in there and you're dealing with the IEPs, the 504s, make sure you got a constant contact with that person. Of course, within the bounds of ethics and legal, if they're open to texting or talking, emailing, just staying in there as you already do, in terms of tips on navigating those spaces in a healthy way. I see mothers doing an amazing job, and just continuing to keep their children in treatment with either myself. I'll give an example. In our private practice, the owner who specializes in all things children, he may be in one room testing one child for ASD or ADHD or any of the conditions, and I'm in the next room doing individual treatment with the mother. And so just continuing to understand that if that is something that's needed, one or both, let's make it a familial thing. Let's make it a family thing to continue to help each and every family that has their own set of needs and concerns and things of that nature. So that's just one way. Continuing to empower. I do a lot of outreach, and so just letting people know that we're here. I'm a big presence guy. And so just letting you know that we're here. So if you need help and you don't know where to go, then here we are. We're waving at you as best we can and as often as we can, and showing up in spaces. And so I think I'll stop there as we get ready to continue.
Thanks, everybody. We'll have to, of course, have this conversation again at some time to get more. But last but not least, I would love for us to kind of share some treasures, takeaways, and thankful thoughts from your journey that you want to encourage our listening audience. Somebody's going to watch this recording and they've been waiting this whole 50 minutes or so to hear this one thing that you're going to say. I'll share mine first. Mine is stay curious about the process. Stay curious every day. Wake up and think, I wonder what today's going to be like. And if you're struggling with something, I wonder how I'm going to get through this struggle. I wonder what tools I get to use today. I just stay curious, because that's this thing we're on called life. And I'll go ahead and hand it off to April, then Arla, and then Dr. Greer. If you could close with that treasure?
My treasure is connecting with parents that may not look like you, believe like you, think like you. Those have been the most valuable people to me in my journey. I would not have known about advocating for my son to get letter grades as a student with disabilities because the school system doesn't tell you that, right? And so if your dream is for your child to attend post-secondary education, such as college or a trade school, it's important for them to have letter grades. Advocate for those letter grades. I cannot stress that enough. Takeaways is that you are more than enough. You are more than enough. And my thankful thought is that take it day by day. Just sometimes we can overthink things. I am a chronic overthinker, so I'm speaking about myself. I've had to teach myself to not overthink everything. Just take it day by day and do your best. And lastly, give yourself grace because no one gives us a book on parenting. And especially when you have an exceptional child, there's no there is no guide for that. We have to figure it out on our own. So those are my treasures, takeaways, thankful thoughts. Thank you.
So mine are trust yourself. I'm going to mimic April and say, give yourself grace. And I'm going to say, build and lean on your community. I'm so thankful for my community and for all of you.
And I guess I would give my final thought here. Love just kind of popped to the front of the mind and heart here for me, you all. Keep, I hear so much love here with all of the mothers as participants here. Keep loving through it, letting it do its best to conquer all. It may not always, but let it do its best and um, to get to the healing. Let's continue to deepen the love. And I've heard a couple people be what appears to be rather vulnerable here today. So I'll take my chance and follow their lead in trying to humble myself and be vulnerable enough to say, um, I was a troubled youth with my mother of her three. And so I had the black sheep model until the Lord lifted that one day and just so even in this age now, above 40 years old, we're still working it out. So the love that I hear illuminating from each and every one of you and trying to heal uh, through the love and understanding that the conditions, mental health, all of that, if we keep loving on each other and assisting each other from the mother to the child and back, then that's all we have. That's all we got. And so I'm taking like you all are breaking up so much for me for my own self and how um, I would love to see this relationship go with my own mother. So thank you for offering me this space just to be here and give this word that I need for myself, if that makes sense. So thank you.
Well, I formally thank April, Arla, and Dr. Greer for being here today. Again, those of you who are watching this recorded session, this concludes our panel discussion today. There are resources we have for you. You can reach out to us at the contact information that will go along with this video. And just thank you for joining us.